This is an LA Times Studios podcast.
People love to hear the buzzwords, Tik Tok Cult, right? But at the end of the day, these are livelihoods that were put in dire situations and they faced consequences. And they felt like they couldn't come forward because they were trusting of these individuals who led not only their professional careers, but also maybe their salvation.
Hello and welcome to LA Crimes. I'm your host, Madison McGhee. Today, I'm joined by LA Times breaking news reporter Nathan Solis. Nathan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited. Today, we're going to dive into a new realm of true crime that we haven't talked about yet on this show, the world of internet cults, and specifically a scandal surrounding the 7M production company and their Tik Tok Dance Cult, which are all words if you're over the age of 45. You have no idea what I'm talking about. It's really confusing, I'll be honest, but we're here to explain. Nathan, if you had to describe this story in one sentence, what would it be?
Oh, I would say that this is a labor dispute that can fit in a vertical format and has to do with a man who claims he is a man of God. So all of that in the TikTok format.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That was perfect. That's adult language for this very Gen Z specific story. But before we start falling down this rabbit hole, I want to talk a little bit about you. You're new to this show. We haven't had you before. So we do this segment with guests called the Gateway Case. So we talk about, your first story that got you interested in being a journalist, covering true crime, breaking news. It could be anything, but what was your first case that made you go, I want to cover things like this?
Yeah, so I have been covering breaking news for probably about 15 years. And the first few years were in Northern California. I was working for a newspaper up there, and basically every day was a very fun, small story that you think, oh, this has nothing really meaty to it. And then it would turn out that, someone up there had a long history of violence and what have you. So that's all to say that up there in Northern California in Redding, I was covering a lot of breaking news that had to do with people who were known actors who would carry out crime. But when I moved back to Southern California back in 2017, I covered a lot of court cases for Newswire. And the Newswire had me covering cases involving a serial killer and some other, I guess you could say, court cases involving bad actors as well. But one of them had to do with someone who was a known serial killer who was caught in the act of attacking a victim, and she was able to kick him off of her, and he cut himself. And so this guy was attacking this woman, he cut himself, and his DNA was all over the room. And as he was running out of the room, he said, "I'm sorry." And that was essentially the last thing he said to her, and she survived, and she was able to authorities were able to identify this person.
Wow. I mean, that's crazy. And I can't help but think about, so you started in Redding as a reporter up there.
Right.
That it predates you, but that is where Sherry Papini went missing, right?
That doesn't predate me. I was up there when she went missing. So I started in 2015.
Okay.
And she went missing in 2016. And when she went missing, we were all in the newsroom very aware of what was going on. And we were following it very closely. And then, after less than a month, she reappeared on Thanksgiving Day. So Sherry Papini, for those who don't know, was referred to...
We've covered that case on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. She was referred to as the supermom. And we were all kind of rolling our eyes in the newsroom because that was kind of a silly thing to say about this woman. But that's neither here nor there. So I remember that up in that community at the time, there was a lot of people that were very much afraid about trafficking because there was this huge concern about there was a highway near Reading. And that obviously doesn't point to anything, but a lot of people were afraid that people were getting abducted and taken on the highway. So
If you get abducted, you're probably getting taken on a highway.
That's right, yes. Little did we know that she actually called her ex-boyfriend to have her drive down to Southern California. But I remember that the time there was a missing person website with a ransom. And this person was offering to pay a ransom for Sherry Papini's return. He had nothing to do with the family, but he was concerned that there should be a ransom. So I called a number on this ransom hotline and I said, "I am with the newspaper. Can you tell me about this ransom?" He's like, "Who are you? Where's Sherry?" I was like, No. Like, I'm a reporter. I look like I'm trying to. He's like, "You're trying to get information." It was very, very cagey, very odd. We couldn't help but laugh in the newsroom. And, she reappeared, and years later, it turned out that she faked it.
Wow. Well, that's really interesting. And what a way to start a career right at the jump.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful conversation with my very good friend Jamie Rice about this case, and you can hear all about it and the wild details. I mean, this story is so crazy. You can hear about it in our episode, which is very funny. I just heard Reading and was like, this sounds like a place I've heard of before.
What are the chances?
And what a great place to start a career in journalism at a very interesting time in the news cycle.
Yeah.
How do you pick the stories that you cover?
We normally don't have much say in what constitutes breaking news.
Okay.
So every day is different. We normally have a beat that we cover, but that kind of flies out the window when breaking news is happening. Right now, every day is different with, this administration. So we kind of have a sense of what we're focusing on for longer form stories, but those get put on the back burner when we have to go out in the field.
Yeah. Is that an exciting part? I could imagine that once you're embedded in a beat and you're maybe doing the more longer form stories, it can feel like you're really invested in one specific story, but it must be exciting to show up and just whatever's happening that day, you're sort of running and gunning.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea about adrenaline and, running into the field it's an exciting prospect if you're stuck in a desk all day. But it's a little frustrating because if you're trying to focus on a longer form story, then that kind of gets pushed to the back. And sources kind of keep wondering, hey, did this guy stand me up about this interview that we had a few days ago? So it goes back and forth. I feel like right now, breaking news has such, there's so much emphasis on the now, right? People don't have much time to invest in longer conversations about things that are happening. But I guess that's just the moment that we're living in.
Yeah, I heard a quote the other day from someone, and they were like, well, all news is breaking news right now. If it's happening right now, they throw breaking news on the front of it, and it's all of a sudden, it's the most important thing that day. It's very interesting. What's your typical beat when you aren't covering breaking news? What are your long forms about?
Well, everyone in the Fast Break team, which is the breaking news team that I'm part of, we keep track of the courts, and we also keep track of different type of government agencies. But that doesn't always, that's very amorphous, right? Some days someone writes about weather and someone writes about crime, and then that might flip the next day. So I guess we're all kind of wearing multiple hats or jacks of all trades.
Yeah, I love that. After the break, Nathan and I will jump into all of the 7M production drama and the impressionable kids that became pawns in this very cultish game. As summer winds down, I'm all about refreshing my wardrobe with staple pieces for the season ahead. Quince nails it with luxe essentials that feel effortless and look polished, perfect for layering and mixing. Their styles are so versatile. I find myself reaching for them again and again. Think chic cashmere and cotton sweaters starting at just $40, washable silk tops, and classic denim pants. Timeless styles you'll keep coming back to. The best part? Everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middlemen, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince works only with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I just got a new apartment and have been eyeing the luxury organic cotton blanket, the cookware, everything home-related. And it's great that Quince has it all for way less than everywhere else. Elevate your fall wardrobe with essentials from Quince. Go to quince.com/LAcrimes for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/LAcrimes to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/LAcrimes. Okay, Nathan, there's a lot to talk about this case, but I have a story actually about this cult. Several years ago, I was working with a music artist, so I was living on a tour bus and hanging out with a lot of backup dancers. And the dance community is, especially at that level, you've been dancing your whole life. So you know every dance company across the country. I have a friend who is from Michigan, and he grew up near Miranda, who is sort of the key person in the Netflix doc series and really the story kind of blossoming. And he knew that I was, doing a lot of like investigative work. And he was like, you've got to watch these TikTok lives. This girl goes live on TikTok and just reads her Bible for hours. And the comments are really interesting because she's reading her Bible, but all of the comments go, hey, you need to call your sister back, or your mom's looking for you. And she'll look up every now and then and just go, oh, it's so great to see you all too. Almost like it's pre-recorded, but she's reading her Bible and it's so weird, and she does this for hours. So I start following this girl and I start screen recording them because I'm like, this is really weird. Maybe there's a story here that I could turn into a documentary series. And we have this connection because my friend knows her parents. Oh. So there might be something that we could do here. I got busy. I kind of kept following up. Then I got wind that someone was working on a project. So I sort of just like didn't really pay attention. And then all of a sudden, like Netflix front page is like this cult documentary. And I was like, I know about this. But it's just really a while. I mean, there's so many elements to this. The religion piece is really interesting. The dance piece, the TikTok piece, it's all wild. Let's start with the beginning and the basics. Who started this TikTok dance cult? And was it always a cult?
It's such a word salad, isn't it? With like all these little details that are kind of flowing in. It's Christian church. It's a TikTok cult, but it's a talent agency, so we wouldn't want to call it a TikTok cult. But the short answer is it was started by Robert Shin, who immigrated from Canada in the early 1990s. Robert Shin founded Shekinah Church in 94, and then several years went by, and then in 2021, he founded 7M, which is this talent agency that purports to help dancers find work in Los Angeles, but also maybe go to a Bible study?
I have this theory, anything could be a cult. So that's and what's a cult for one person doesn't necessarily mean it's a cult for someone else. If you feel like you're stuck there, you have to be there, your whole community is there, it's a cult. And some people might not feel that way about a certain thing, whereas other people do.
Right. I mean, some multi-level marketing could probably be construed as a cult, right?
Working at Lululemon could be a cult to someone and not to other people. So it's like it all is like, so working here. I mean, it's like anything could be a cult.
Yeah, people are flippant with the term cult. But yeah, many of the people that are involved in this story would allege that this is the definition of a cult.
Yeah, and I think what I want to distinguish, because we do throw that word around a lot in society today, really this goes down to like coercive control. Like that is the root of all of this. And I think religion just sets the tone for coercive control to exist. And then you're tying in now work, finances, social media, fame, and it just becomes more and more prevalent.
Right. You feel cornered or trapped because it's not only a spiritual or religious obligation, it's your livelihood.
Yeah.
So now you're
Social
double stuck.
circles, money.
Right.
And we'll get into sort of what they were controlling. But how did Robert Shin go about combining this invite-only church, which seems counterintuitive, knowing they were sort of evangelical Christians, with a entertainment company? Like, how did they merge together?
Well, my understanding is that the Christian angle was involved in how these individuals were being brought in. But most of the promises that were being made to these folks were that they would have opportunities. And then when they were essentially being brought in, they were meant to give tithes, which is essentially they were told to give the bulk of their earnings to the church and to Robert Shin and his associates, because that was the only way that these people would find salvation. And if they didn't give their money to the church, then they and their families would find eternal suffering. They would burn in hell and all of these other things. And I think that's essentially the gist of how these people were forced to reckon with this idea that, oh, I don't want to upset Robert. I don't want to upset this man of God, because that was how he presented himself.
Right. Right. And when you first caught wind of this story, was it before or after the Netflix documentary series dropped?
So I was aware of this dispute before the Netflix series because there were a number of lawsuits filed that were first filed by Robert Shin and his company. They were alleging that former associates and former church members were attempting to defame him. And then many of the people that were interviewed in the documentary filed a countersuit, and they essentially laid out all of the claims about fraud and COVID, COVID-related fraud, where essentially Robert Shin received funding from COVID-related funds during the pandemic, but didn't give those to his employees. And then there were also claims about sexual coercion or sexual assault with these employees. So all of that was playing out, but I don't think any of that case rose to the level of attention until the Netflix documentary. And then it really became something that we couldn't avoid talking about.
Yeah. Which I think also is like such a key point of this show. So much that is worked out through the court system these days and the court of public opinion is really because of social media. I mean, we are seeing cases come back to life. We're seeing cases go through the court system because of their popularity on social media. So it feels really interesting. A lot of times you hear about a cult several years after it's sort of wrapped up, it's finished. They kept things very secretive, and that's intentional. This is really bizarre to me because you're using already high-profile people with big followings to become members of your organization, knowing that someone might see that and go, this is raising some questions for me. And if they say anything, these are high-profile individuals. You're not in Utah in the middle of nowhere living on, hundreds of acres. You're in the middle of Los Angeles.
Right. Yeah, this case was tried. This case has not gone to trial yet, but now it's in the court of public opinion because everyone is talking about it. And so many more people are aware of it because of the connection to TikTok, which is the surefire way to get people to share snippets of your documentary or your story. So I think a lot of the pushback that you might have seen from some people who may have defended 7M or the Shekinah Church is that these are disgruntled employees or disgruntled people who felt burned by this organization. But when you get down to the bottom of it, these are claims that are at a point now where you can't just discredit these people just because they may be disgruntled. They claim that their livelihoods were being held hostage, essentially, by Robert Shin and the other members of the church and the talent agency. And so that's worth listening to, right? You want to hear what these people have to say.
Yeah, it feels much bigger than oh, I'm upset about my 9 to 5 job, and more of like, this is a 24/7, I'm cut off from my family, and yeah, it's really wild. What do we know about the original members and how Shin initially persuaded these young dancers to sort of join the talent agency side of the church?
From my understanding is that they were being promised opportunities to go and have jobs in the entertainment industry. And that kind of was coupled with this promise that, well, maybe you can attend a Bible study, or maybe you would be interested in finding some housing within our church. So everything kind of was like a web in terms of how it was connected. Um, for many of the people who were, I guess, alleged to be original members, they seem to have come up forward and said that there was just a lot of promises made that were never really fully delivered. But then there was also payments that were promised, money for appearing in some type of video, and that never appeared either. And that all went to Robert Shin and the other associates.
So how did Shin go about isolating the members of this organization from their families? Because that is sort of the piece that really blew this all up in social media, was that Miranda specifically wasn't communicating with her family, and they were very worried and concerned. And there's the staple video of her parents with her sister begging her basically to reach out to them. And how does it go from you're going to church and you're dancing on TikTok to your parents begging, almost like hostage style video, for you to reach out to them?
Right. Yeah, no, that's heartbreaking to see these family members that are asking for their loved ones to contact them. So what I have read in court documents that have been alleged by former church members is that Robert Shin and the company have total control over the livelihoods of these individuals, down to the minutia about whether or not they should go to the doctor, whether or not they should be able to see someone outside of the church romantically. And that also meant that some of these individuals were given allowances, and they were told what they could and could not spend their money on. So it was sort of a total immersion of this church doctrine that was basically being decided by the members of the church.
And what do we know about these arranged marriages? We know several of the members of this group were like married to each other. And that all happened within the organization. They didn't show up in a relationship always. It was like they met through this group. And then all of a sudden, I know in Miranda's case, it's like her parents just found out that she got married.
Right. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the logistics about how these people went about getting arranged in terms of the marriages, but I do know that some of the members had claimed that these marriages were put together by church members.
Yeah, it's very weird. And then I know Miranda's parents were saying that they were trying to look up like any marriage certificate through California, if anything had been signed, any paperwork had been filed, and they weren't really able to find any of that paperwork. So it's like, are you legally married? Like, do you know anything about the legality of these marriages, or if they were playing the house? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, it seems like these marriages may have been just in the church, but not legally binding. But I'm not entirely sure. I have read through some of the civil court documents, and it does look like these were marriages that were maybe just in ceremony or pageantry.
Yeah, wow. Well, then we know that this all starts to go sideways and culminates into a raid on the house where a lot of them were living. But we'll get into that right after we take a break. Welcome back to LA Crimes. I'm here with Los Angeles Times breaking news reporter Nathan Solis. So, Nathan, as you mentioned earlier, there were a bunch of lawsuits filed against Robert Shin, and he's also filed some countersuits as well. What story does this paint of what was really going on now that you have sort of both sides of these lawsuits? What's happening here?
So, from what we can tell in the civil court is that there was a dispute between the two parties, Robert Shin and his church, and these former church members who are alleging various offenses, including fraud and sexual crimes. But Shin and his company, Shin and the Shekinah Church, are claiming that these people are just disgruntled and they are seeking to take down his organization. He also claims that some of the members are seeking to extort him because one of them may be a jilted lover, according to his claim. So right now, the case is sort of put in an awkward position right now because of the federal raid that took place.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that. You recently reported on the raid of this home that's linked to Shin and the Shekinah Church, the 7M talent organization. Where is this house?
So this is in Tujunga in Los Angeles County. It's a pretty large compound. And on July 25th, the federal authorities raided this home just after, I want to say, around 6 a.m. So residents in this residential neighborhood woke up to the sound of flashbangs and a loud booming voice from a speaker. And those were the federal agents that were calling into the house. And then a vehicle rammed through a metal gate to get into the house.
Wow. And what was their reasons for raiding it? And what was I'm sure you need a lot of paperwork before you're allowed to ram anything through a metal gate. What was on that filing?
Yeah, so the federal authorities are keeping their cards close to their chest right now. They're not disclosing exactly what they're looking into. We do know that they were serving a search warrant on crimes related to, and I'm going to be sure I get this correctly, related to money laundering, tax evasion, sex trafficking, and COVID pandemic era fraud. So all of these are what we know of. There are search warrants that were filed. There are search warrants that are filed in federal court, but those are under seal, meaning that the investigation is still ongoing.
Wow. These are a lot of heavy hitter, white collar crimes happening potentially.
Right. No,
behind
absolutely.
These gates. There were reports of some people in handcuffs the day of the raids. Were there people taken into custody? And if so, who were they?
No. So there have been no arrests. There were several people that were detained and that we could see were handcuffed that were led out onto a front lawn. But essentially, at this point, no one has been arrested. There were other facilities or other places that were raided as well on the same day. But as far as we can tell, no one has been arrested, but their search warrants have been served to the parties. We know that much from the civil case because the attorneys in the civil case said that they are aware of the claims that were being made. They also claim that the parties named on the other side, the former church members, may have had advanced knowledge of the raid. And so there seems to be some, I want to say there's a feeling from the Shekinah Church attorneys and their side of the party. They're feeling that an indictment is coming down soon.
Wow. What were the other places raided that day?
My understanding is that there was a church location or something affiliated with the church and another location in Orange County. But we don't have too much details about what those sites look like.
Wow. And can you tell me about the state of the house? There were people obviously inside at 6 a.m., presumably because they live there. But who all was living in the house at the time?
So we don't have too much information about who lived there. We know that former church members were following the raid, and they were apparently naming some of the people from the helicopter footage. So they are essentially pointing out former former church members were pointing out church members. We know from our reporting that people in the neighborhood told us, they essentially said that when the Shekinah family, church family, moved into the house, they distributed flyers to the community, and they told the community, we want this to be a meeting place for the neighborhood. We want people to use our pool. We want you to feel welcome. And then afterward, they kind of withdrew and they became a bit more isolated. But then other members of the neighborhood said that the people who lived there were friendly and kept to themselves just like anyone else would. So they painted a picture of suburbia, but maybe just a bit more guarded than other properties in the area.
What was Robert Shin's response to these raids? Has he spoken publicly about this? Has he made a statement? Has anyone from the TikTok management company come forward and said anything in defense of this? What's going on there?
We haven't seen any official comments, any statements of that matter. We are aware of what the attorneys feel like, and the attorneys are feeling like the feds are looking at their case very closely. This case involves several federal agencies, including the Department of Labor, the U.S. Postal Service. And so this is a matter of, I think, a lot of the allegations that were made in the civil lawsuit by the former church members are what they're circling around right now.
Yeah. Wow. And where is Robert Shin now? Is he still living freely in LA, going to church?
I mean, he's not in custody. We know that much. And we have no other information other than that.
Wow. What do you think that this says about the new age of internet cults? Obviously, this is way different than a Manson or a Jonestown story, but it does feel like it's sort of the new wave of promising fame, promising fortune. You meet any 15-year-old today and their dream job is to become a TikToker. So when that is the new sort of golden egg, what do we have to look forward to for the future?
Well, it kind of reminds that influencers are kind of blurring the line between employees and people who are just sharing a part of their lives on social media. I think it kind of gets down to the idea that this is a labor dispute that has garnered a lot of attention because it happens to be coupled with an institution that purports to be a church. And it also happens to be preying on people who are looking for an opportunity in the entertainment industry. Now, these are all allegations that were being made by these former members. No one has been charged right now. So at this point, it's, I think, too early to say what exactly has been committed by the Shekinah Church or its leadership. But I do know that this moment in time is unique in that we're looking at someone who is being accused of carrying out some heinous offenses, and all of these individuals are within our grasp when we look at TikTok. And they're entertainers. And so it kind of makes you question what entertainers are going through when they are sharing a part of themselves on social media.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it reminds me very similarly of the stories you hear when, like, Mary-Kate and Ashley turned 18 and talking about their childhood, and a lot of the Disney stars that are now, they're like my age now, who are writing books and sort of exposing what they went through at like 16 years old on sets. And it is interesting when you look at this, it is such a internet phenomenon case, but it is a labor issue. I think that's a really good way to put it. And I don't think a lot of people online are sort of thinking about it that way because we're really sort of glossy-eyed over the sort of entertainment value of this story instead of looking at it from like, this is like, yeah, I mean, Department of Labor stepping in is really interesting in this case.
Yeah, no, there are salacious details involved because it's, something that has to do with TikTok, and people love to hear the like buzzwords, TikTok cult, right? But at the end of the day, these are livelihoods that were put in just dire situations, and they face consequences. And they felt like they couldn't come forward because they were trusting of these individuals who led not only their professional careers, but also maybe their salvation.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes to them, beyond just this life potentially and into the next. So this investigation is still ongoing, and there really hasn't been any sort of concrete. We don't even know really if there will be charges, what the charges would be, trial, all of that seems so far away. What do you think is going to be the next steps in this investigation?
So typically what happens is the warrant is served, and which has already happened. There probably will be more warrants served if the investigation is ongoing. And then we'll hear about an indictment, and we'll hear about the parties who are going to be charged. And then they'll get to make their case. Them being the federal government, they'll get to lay out what exactly the charges are and what the crimes are being alleged.
Wow. Well, we'll be following this closely and maybe have you back on for an update down the line when there's developments.
Yeah.
Nathan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was great. And that's it for LA Crimes. If you like the show, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or by going to latimes.com/podcast bonus. That's latimes.com/podcast bonus. You'll gain access to this week's bonus episode where Nathan and I talk about some of his latest breaking news coverage, specifically a dramatic end to a bank heist crew that originally made off with millions before their capture.